Okay, morning everybody. Today we're going to talk about the active shooter. And I think that this is a kind of a tough topic to be on both sides of it, as a healthcare provider taking care of patients, but also, God forbid, we're ever involved in an event. It's incredibly scary to even think about, and it's just almost overwhelming. But you have to realize that it could happen. The days that we live in right now are totally insane, and it can totally happen. So our aim today is to discuss some of the definitions and statistics about active shooter cases, to realize they can happen near you, and then think about what you will do if it does happen, and what happens if you're a post-event provider. Financial disclosures, I have none, nada, nothing, zilch, zip. I wish I did. Think about what would happen if you're at Kings County Hospital and some event occurs either in the county side or the downstate side, and what would it be like to be in one of those situations, right? I put this cool picture up here so you could like reflect and look down at our hospital. Plus it's a cool picture I took with my drone. So an active shooter event is an individual who is actively engaging in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area. And if you look at the stats over the years, it's not getting better as much as we would like it to. Think about the timing of these events. It's important to know. Most of them, or I shouldn't say most, but the largest number happened in June, and also the largest number happened in Saturdays. So when you guys are planning your request for days off, in 2020, there are some nice stats out there. There are 40 active shooter incidents, right? They happened in 19 states. I would not want to be in California. I would not want to be in Illinois. But 126 wounded, 38 dead, and even one police officer was killed by an active shooter. These are crazy stats. Of the 42 shooters in that year, 35 were male, 3 were female, 4 were unknown. They don't know who did it. They weren't sure. The ages of the shooters were from 15 to 87. That's incredibly young and incredibly old, in my opinion. 7 committed suicide at the end of the event. These people had no intention of being captured. They had no intention of a good outcome. They wanted to die during the event. 24 were captured. 2 were shot by PD and 2 were shot by citizens. And one of them, I don't know if you remember the case, but there was a guy who shot up a church and then ran out. And then people in the church jumped in their cars and trucks, chased the guy down and shot him in the street. I didn't say where it was, but crazy to me that that happens. And 5 of these shooters are still at large. They were never caught. So where do these things happen? Where do they take place? Well, the biggest one is in businesses, and usually where the person works themselves. They can happen in schools, they can happen in open spaces, but they can happen in healthcare facilities, which I think should really like freak you out and strike close to home. And then of course, government properties, you know, the post office is sort of that famous one for this. And then also in houses of worship. These are the stats from 2017, and there were 5 cases that happened in hospitals and healthcare facilities. All right, 2 more happened and 2 more in 2019, and yet another one this year up at Jacoby. So these things happen at healthcare facilities. 29% happened in the ED, and 23% happened in the parking lot. That's more than 50% of these episodes happened where we work, near us. This should be incredibly striking close to home. So what should you do? And I want you to take a minute and think about, if you're in an active shooter situation, how would you react? What would your like first thoughts be? And I put this picture up there on purpose because it should be really like jarring. It should be really stimulating to you, because if you think about it and you have a plan, you have a chance of doing much better. All the stats out there that review these cases say that you should, first thing, run. If you can't do that, then hide. And if you can't do that, then fight. And this is a mantra that I want you guys to like sort of commit to memory and have in the back of your head, should anything happen to you. Well, let's go through them specifically. So running away should be your first option. You should run in the opposite direction of where you hear the gunshots, but realize you may not always hear gunshots. Don't wait around for an announcement on the PA system. because the person running the PA is probably already running out the door. They're not going to say, you should run, you hear gunshots. Don't go in elevators, take the stairs. You know, the worst scenario, you get in an elevator to go down and out, and then the door opens up on the third floor, and there's the active shooter standing in front of you. Where are you going to go? At least if you go into a staircase and you start running down, and then the active shooter is below you, you can turn around and run back up. There's no turning around out of an elevator. And then have an exit plan. Any place where you spend a lot of time in your job or at home, you should know at least 2 different ways to get out of that area. So if wherever the ED is or wherever your office is, you should have at least 2 different exit plans to get out of that section. So if one's blocked, you can go out a different way. Leave all your belongings behind. Don't take anything. Make sure your hands are visible. Remember, the response to an active shooter incident is the SWAT team coming in. And these guys are super focused on terminating the threat. They're looking for somebody with a gun in their hand. But if you have a cell phone, that's also a black structure that if you have your cell phone and you like reach out to them to say, help me, they just see a gun because they don't want to get shot either. So you really put your life in danger if you do things like that. So have your hands open, up in the air. They have to see that you are not a threat to them. They will just go right past you like you are not even there. But if you are even a little bit of a threat, you do not want these SWAT guys to give you a second glance. Help other people if possible. If people are confused or don't know what's going on, running in the wrong direction, try and get them to go in the same direction with you out in the correct place. And then listen to PD. If police department says get down, like don't be like, why? That means that probably somebody standing behind you, they're going to take a shot at. So you don't want to be in their line of fire. Whatever they say to do, you should do. It's not a time to be like, I have my rights. I want to question what you're saying. You're going to end up, well, ventilated. If you can't run away for some unknown situation, then your next thing to do is barricade yourself in and hide. And this is only if you don't have a safe exit. Your first job should be to get out of there and to run away. But pick an unlikely spot where an active shooter is going to find you. At the end of a hallway that doesn't lead any place, they're not going to go down there because that's not where they're trying to get to, unless that is the place where they're trying, but it's unlikely. Pick a place that has a lock on the door. If you don't have a lock, you can always do something that'll help you out and like keep other people from coming in. There's more ways to lock a door. And then await the police department to get there. Pick spots like a bathroom, the medication room, janitor's closets, things that are like not likely for them to want to come through on their way to wherever they're going. If you can put furniture or something in front of the door, that is one more layer of wood or a barricade for the bullet to get through before it gets to your body. And maybe that'll stop it and prevent you from getting injured. Stay out of view. If you pick a place at windows, don't like look out the window and see what's happening. Just stay down and stay away. Stay low, right? If the active shooters are shooting, they're looking to hit the mass of the body. So they're going to shoot in the chest and pelvis region. So if you're on the floor, your chances of getting hit are lower. Silence your phone, turn it off. The last thing you need is your phone vibrating or going off when somebody is outside the door where you happen to be. Don't bring any electronics in the room with you. Once I read one paper where somebody locked himself in a closet, but brought a little TV in there with them, but it had to be plugged in outside. So the cord was like coming under the door, like showing where they were hiding. That's not that bright. And then there's more than one way to lock a door, right? If you guys have a belt, you can put a belt around the control arms to the door, and there's no way anybody will be able to open that door until you remove the belt. So just realize there's ways that you could lock yourself in that are not just a lock on the door. If you can't run and you can't hide and your only option is to fight, then you should be prepared to fight. And you should do everything you can to be the best at like that kind of event. If you're discovered where you're hiding, that will also lead to such a situation. Be bold, be aggressive. The active shooter thinks that they have the upper hand, they're in charge. And if you act, I won't say irrational, but if you act like very aggressive, they're gonna be like, wait, I thought I was in charge here. So you may take them by surprise and be able to slip past them or even get on top of them. Band together. If you guys are all hiding together and an active shooter comes into the space where you are, spread out. One of you may be injured in the melee, but at least some of you will be able to take the person down and neutralize the threat. And then try and find a weapon where you are. I went to a lecture once by one of the CA guys. And he was like, I always keep a hammer in my desk drawer. And we're like, why? He's like, because a hammer's legal. I can have it there. Baseball bats, people go to the park and play baseball all the time. You're allowed to have it in your office. It seems crazy until it's not. Fire extinguishers are great weapons, right? Because you get a lot of range with a fire extinguisher. You can spray it at them, get it in their eyes, make them so they can't see you. It fills the whole room with a cloud so they can't shoot at you. They can't see where you are. Like I said before, having a hammer in your desk, I know you think it's crazy, but I have a hammer in my desk at work. I have a lot of other tools in there too, not just a hammer, but I have a hammer in my desk. Any heavy object works, furniture works. And I think my last resort would be like some sort of like homemade shank or a knife, just because you have to get way too close to the shooter to use it. I don't recommend that at all, but if that's all you have, that's all you have. Let's switch gears now and think about what would you do if you were the post-event provider? Think about what is going on in your hospital or what is going on in whatever community you're in, and this stuff goes down. Your management is your basic ABCs, which you guys all know because you're ER docs and you do this every day of your life. But you want to control the bleeding. If you're in a place where they have IVs, you can put a line in and get them fluid, get them volume. This is a really good image I put up on purpose of how to control bleeding. The gauze is really, really folded up and it's one spot on the hole and you can see what you're looking for. A lot of these guys will need angiograms, especially if the holes are near a vessel, because you don't know where the bullet went once it's inside you. Bullets bounce. And we'll see angiogram in a second. Update their tetanus, they need antibiotics. Remember, there are secondary missiles. If you get shot, the bullet is going through clothing, it's bouncing off a brick wall, and you have other stuff in the wound besides just the bullet. People also say the bullet is shot, it's so hot that it sterilizes the wound. That is not true. And then think about TXA for your exsanguinating patients. Here's a person putting on a bandage wrong, and therefore they were forced to go up to a tourniquet. This bandage has a very large surface area, and they're also using the flat part of their hand. I want you to use a little bit of pressure in one single spot and focus on the bleeding spot. This is a really good example of what not to do, all right? They don't have the pants cut off, so you don't know what's bleeding. For all you know, it's bleeding from another site and dripping down. And they're using the whole flat part of their hand, and the gauze are just being saturated because they're just absorbing. They're not putting pressure on. Here's a nice image we staged the other day, and this is the good way to do it, except of course you should be wearing gloves. If you can't stop bleeding by direct pressure, then tourniquets are an option. And these are the nice tourniquets that we have in CCT. I think you guys should all have a tourniquet in your car or in your homes, just in case. You never know what's gonna happen. We saw a case the other day of a person who was washing dishes, dropped the glass in the sink, went to grab it, and it shattered right as they grabbed it, and it slit the radial artery. And they lost a lot of blood. And if you had a tourniquet at home, you might be able to arrest the blood flow. You can make homemade tourniquets, right? You wrap a cloth around. Notice this tourniquet is a very wide piece of cloth. It's not a skinny little band because you don't want to cut the skin. You just want to apply pressure to the vessel that's underneath it. And then you just twist it down with a piece of something solid like tongue depressors, and then tie another piece of cloth around it to hold it from unwinding. There's something called junctional tourniquets, which I think you guys should know about. The military actually uses them a fair amount. But basically, holding pressure right where the limb meets the body is very, very, very difficult. So they make these special devices that you can deploy that will hold against your groin or around your axilla. But it's a really, really dangerous place to get injured because your chances of exsanguinating are much, much higher. This is a resus room from the old C building ER of a person that was shot in the arm, and it was just a brachial artery bleeding. And we had so much trouble getting control because it was high up that they just bled and bled and bled. They lost so much blood. When you get shot in a vessel, the bullet goes through the vessel, or if you get stabbed in a vessel, and the vessel spasms and you don't bleed that much until it doesn't. And then once it stops spasming, then you have a chance of bleeding death. So if you evaluate a patient, look at their gunshot wound and be like, oh, there's not that much blood, I'm okay with it, they can wait. And you put them over in the corner, and then the spasm releases, you can get in a lot of trouble. So anybody that's got a hole that's near like a vascular path, they really need angiograms to make sure there's no vessel that's spasming and not bleeding now, but could bleed later. Because if you send them home with a non-life-threatening wound, it can become life-threatening if it opens up and the spasm releases. And you can see the vessel here. I think you can see it. There's a trifurcation. And right here, there's a cutoff of where the bullet went through and there's no flow in that vessel. So let's review. There are too many incidents that are happening these days. We need to do something about it, which we can't do too much, but we can vote for people who will. They happen in businesses, schools, and government buildings. Handguns are more common than rifles because they're smaller, easier to conceal. But that's lucky for us because handguns have lower velocities and will cause less damage to the human body. Hospitals can be targeted, and it can involve us either in the active shooter event or in post-shooter paying attention to the patients. Your options are to run first, then hide, fight as a last resort. For resuscitation, do your ABCs, control the bleeding, and then get definitive care. And realize that there may be many injuries in one patient. You may not have just one injury. You have to strip them down. You have to make sure they're safe before you send them home, before you take care of discharging them from your care. Don't forget the rule of trauma. Number of holes plus number of bullets found on radiography. It's got to be an even number. It can't be odd. If it's odd, you've missed something. You've missed a hole or you've missed a bullet. I thank you guys for listening. And does anybody have any questions?